Hey everyone, welcome to the Memento Futurum podcast. This is Vanessa Lamorte, your host, and today we're talking with Kathryn Solie, who is a dear teacher for me in learning about the poison path. And so, a little bit about Kathryn before we begin. Many people know her as a poisonous plant educator. And she feels that at this time, her mission is to bring about a greater cultural understanding of certain aspects of plant consciousness and ultimately help generate a community of unique practitioners in dialogue with one another, learning from and supporting each other both in commonality and contrast. She believes that together we can recover the most ancient human lineage, our relationship to the wisdom of the plant kingdom. Kathryn studied painting at Naropa University, a Buddhist-inspired school in Boulder, Colorado. She does sacred plant medicine apprenticeship with the Gaia School of Healing in Putney, Vermont, and completed a training in Hakomi, a type of mindfulness-based body-centered psychotherapy. Although all of these trainings influence the way she works, they ultimately pale in comparison to what she's learned from the plants themselves. And I just want to give you a big, big welcome, Kathryn. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to chat with you and to talk about the journey and your journey. And I do want to share a little bit about my journey and like how your work has influenced me. I feel like just it's so deep and cavernous. I'm like, can a
Mm.
podcast even do it? But
No, these plants go deep.
they do. So I love that you went to Naropa because it's also a transpersonal school. I went to Sophia in Palo Alto.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like I'm just kind of framing this way because I know you as a poisonous plant lady, you know? But I'm like, you have this amazing other part of your background that I would love to get to know, and your like the artist self. And so like one of the things that I kind of just want to ask at the beginning is, um, what would you say has been your like what was the intersection or perhaps like what was like your transition from art to poisonous plants if there was one? Like were those worlds separate for you? Were they together? Are they still together? I'm just curious about that.
Mm. Um, well, I feel like it's interesting to have this sort of public facing persona of like the poisonous plant lady. And because that's such a love for me, plants in general, like all plants. But I think I was drawn to the poisonous plants in particular because of what they represent. And that sort of energy that they represent is something that I've been drawn to like my whole life. So no matter what I'm studying, no matter what I'm interested in, I'm always interested in this underlying sort of thing, which is somewhat hard to put into words, but I guess it's just the underlying nature of reality, and the things that are not generally touched on in our culture. Things
Hmm.
that you're not supposed to talk about, like trauma and death and shadows and corruption and these things that the last couple of years they've come more into the public arena, but the ways that they have come into the public arena are very, in my opinion, superficial and limited, which is frustrating at times because, teaching these classes a few years ago was in a way a lot easier because I didn't have to um, deal with certain beliefs that people
Hmm.
are coming into now that, they've seen on these like meme accounts and whatnot. But anyway, I don't know if that really answers your question. It's
Hmm.
there wasn't like an official transition, when I was at Naropa, I was also on my own and with other teachers studying like metaphysics and spirituality and psychology. And when it came down to it, I was always drawn to the same sort of energy. Like when I would study the pantheon of deities in Eastern religions, I was always drawn to the wrathful deities, what we, our translation in English as wrathful deities, but they're the ones that, the most commonly known one might be Kali, and again, they're misunderstood, much like the poisonous plants are misunderstood. So it's just this sort of underlying desire to understand the nature of reality and also the nature of suffering and how to um, truly be free and truly be at peace, as opposed to um, I really hurt my back a few weeks ago, and um, I've been prone to these back spasms for the last couple of years, and I had a really bad one recently, and it brought me back to something that I was learning, years and years ago, like early on in my
Mm-hmm.
explorations with spirituality, which was that, our minds and our emotions are often a part of physical ailments. And anyway, I've been kind of tapping back into that space. And I was looking online the other day for affirmations for healing, which is something that I have gotten away from for a long time, as I've gotten more like serious in my practice.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten and looking for these affirmations, I really appreciate them. And they do a lot of the stuff that's out there is just so focused on this like superficial kind of, you will feel peace, I feel peace, I'm at peace, I feel love, I am love. And there is something that happens, but it's when you have these like strong underlying belief systems that are like, I'm unlovable, you have this trauma that maybe you've never even fully acknowledged consciously to yourself. Those affirmations, they can only get in so deep. And so that's I guess where my interest lies. And with the poisonous plants, I feel like they take you right to that. They can, they
Mm-hmm.
can. They don't always, and but they can take you right to those places that where they can bring us at least in contact with them or make us more aware of these places that we might otherwise um, avoid or be afraid of going towards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that like your whole share there like reminds me of just like that concept of holding what's uncomfortable or what's unsavory or the things that we don't like or whatever, and how a lot of what's out there today is just like wanting to get back to comfort and like just like
Yeah.
that thing, and how so much of life can be, not doesn't have to be, but can be like deeply uncomfortable, painful even.
Mhm.
And when I found you in 2019, so I found you in the fall of 2019, and it was one of those situations where like I had just learned about Datura. That was my
Mm.
She was my shepherd. I don't know what word to use. She was like my, hey, welcome to this world. I just found her. She grows here in the Mojave, and that's her righty eye. And it was like a situation where I found you through someone who posted it, a friend of a friend or something like that. And it was like, my class starts like next week. And I was like, oh man, I gotta like move on this. and and it was like so quick, but right at that time it was I think September 2019. It was fall for sure. And my cousin had just passed away from a drug overdose
Mhm.
in
Oh.
the summer. And so it was like this deep time of grief. And then 2019, then like the pandemic hit, and then I got pregnant. And so like studying with you, like I'm just like recounting and thinking back, like studying with you and like being in that deep initiation with the poisonous plants, and like learning about all these different plants and what their plant spirits could teach me and offer me, and doing the plant journeys and like being in that space. I'm like, wow, it's just like super. initiatic and transitional, like very threshold liminal energy, um, of like my maiden to mother transition, or like from grief to maybe less of a like a lighter load of grief. Like I'm not, deep in that now, but sometimes it'll still hit me. Like just like all of these different types of themes that I feel like now that I'm way zoomed out, I'm like, well, this is very poisonous plant education to me in my
Mm.
own story. I don't know. Like it's actually kind of fun to um, be witnessing that. So I just like have to say that out loud, like, whoa. Um, and how, like what you mentioned with the wrathful deities, like, yeah, I don't know. I think for me, the way that I interpret what you're saying, or the way that I've learned with the plants, it's like they've helped me see the things that I don't want to look at, like that I
Mm.
want to turn away from, but like to keep my eyes open with myself or with the world or whatever. And I don't know, like I think that they have been really special. Like, they have a very special place in my heart and repertoire of different, perhaps, beings or skills. Right before our call, I had some flower essences. I had some
Mm.
Datura redia that I made, and then Matia poppy that my friend made
Mm.
up in NorCal, which I think is a poison. Like I know, like I don't know, are all poppies poisonous? This is a question for you. Do
Oh,
you know?
I mean, the dose makes the poison.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. See, there's California poppy, and I don't know if that's technically a poppy or not.
Got you.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
It's the one that looks like a fried egg, you know? Um,
yeah.
yeah, but I like that mix together. I don't know, poppy and that poppy and the datura together, they
Mm.
have a special mix. I feel like
Dreamy.
yeah, yeah. And like a lot of voice work. I don't
Mm.
always take it before I do podcasts, but I was like, no, today this is a special moment. Like this is a very special moment. So I had
Mm.
to name that. But yeah, I was curious to, so in within that, and you were sharing about your back, and like I was thinking about like how the back um can be represented by the unconscious. Um
Mm.
and then I was thinking about something in there with what you were sharing. I'm like, oh, I have so many planets in the 12th house. Like maybe has been my personal draw to, the poisonous
Mm.
plants. It's just like
Yeah.
the unseen and that kind of thing. Um, but like just to kind of, you know, ask this question for people who have no idea, or this is like their first time listening to something about poisonous plants, like, um, are when you're sharing about them, like it's how would you say we're working with them, like just plant spirits, or maybe it like physically, like I just want to hear from your speech, like how would you say to somebody, like their first time hearing about poisonous plants, and like if they were attracted to this, where could one begin?
Well, that's a good question. Something I always forget. Like, oh yeah, not everybody knows what I'm talking about. And then people get mad at me online sometimes.
I forget too. I'm like, oh, let's
Yeah,
go right into all the juicy. Like, I have all these
right.
things,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I mean, for me, my main approach with working, well, first of all, poisonous plants, is an interesting term because almost all the plants that I teach about also have a long history of being used medicinally. And so there's something that Paracelsus said, the dose makes the poison. So, if you drink too much water, it can kill you. And,
hmm
so it depends the dosage of, Datura. If you take a certain dosage of it, it can be medicinal, it can stop an asthma attack. It's been used historically to treat asthma on every continent where it grows. But if you don't know what you're doing, you take the wrong dose, it can be, extremely unpleasant, and in certain instances can result in organ damage and potentially death.
Mm-hmm.
So, for my purposes, I'm connecting with the plants primarily on what's called the plant spirit level, where I'm working energetically with the plants and doing plant meditations. And that's like my number one. And then my number two is flower essences. Which is a vibrational herbal medicine, which I'm sure probably if people are listening to this, they probably know what those are. Um, but flower essence shouldn't contain, it's an energetic medicine and it doesn't contain much, if any, of the physical plant. And yeah, but then, again, I don't like to discount the plants being used physically because, as I said, many of them have a long history of being used medicinally. The opium poppies, you were talking about poppies earlier, have a very long history of being used medicinally. They have such a kind of dark history too, and a dark present because we have all these synthetic opioids that are, you know, the number, you mentioned your cousin.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they died of, but it's the number one cause of death for people under 50 in the US is opioid overdose. And it's at
Mm-hmm.
this point generally fentanyl.
Yeah, it was fentanyl. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I've known people too that have overdosed by accident. Like they thought they were doing cocaine or something, and there's like a little bit of fentanyl in it and
Yeah.
died that way. But when I got into a car accident a few years ago, when I got in the ambulance, of course, they didn't ask my consent or ask if I had a history with addiction or anything. They just gave me fentanyl. And,
Whoa.
um, it did its job.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to stop. I had to tell them to stop giving it to me. I had to,
Wow.
and they were really confused by that. But um, yeah, so
I love that you made the connection between poppy and fentanyl because I'm like, aha, like I
yeah.
took a poppy essence, my cousin
Mm,
Mikey, like just like that grieving liminal space right before you came into my
mm,
field, like, oh wow, that's
mm.
really special. Um, yeah, and I mean, so you talked about like the um perhaps resurgence of poisonous plants, like in kind of more, I don't know, would you say mainstream? Maybe with more
Like
popularity, strength? I don't
our
even know.
our type of mainstream, but I don't think it's gonna be
Yeah.
trending
N-
anytime soon.
I'm like, I don't know how to use this word today.
Yeah.
But, but
There's an increased interest as of the last few years, I would say.
so yeah, I'm curious, like, what do you think that is? Like, perhaps on a world soul level, or like, why are poisonous plants maybe um, helping us to bring more interest? Or like, I guess, what's your take on that?
Um, well, like you mentioned, you started taking the class right before 2020. And, I think 2020 was a big turning point for many people in the world in terms of, however they viewed the events of 2020 and the world events since then, whatever their perspective is, most people are like, what the fuck is going on? Sorry, I don't know if I can say
Yeah,
that on here,
you be
but
yourself. It's good.
okay. Like, what is going on? Like, I think even people who are like, oh, I'm not gonna follow the news, I'm not gonna, you know, I'm busy living my life, which I like understand and respect that. I think we all can feel underneath like there's something is really off collectively. And it
Mm-hmm.
has been for a long time, but it feels like it's accelerating or there's something going on collectively that is concerning to me, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think to meet that, when there's great darkness that arises, great light comes through to meet that. Um, but I think long term, in order to kind of like what I was talking about earlier, in order to really get to um, make long term changes, we can't just do these sort of everything's going to be okay. Let's just think positive and everything will change or um which that has its place too, thinking positively, having like a positive attitude and not getting into this pessimism, this like depression and spiraling downwards, thinking about the state of the world, because that's not going to help
Mm-hmm.
you or anybody really. I mean, you might have to go through a I had to go through a grieving process in 2020 because that really, really like I thought I was already pretty aware of things happening in the collective. And then I was like, holy shit, this is like on another level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think that, I think there's a craving that people have where they really want to, like you mentioned earlier, like people just they want to feel better. They want to, I don't know how you said it exactly, but I think, you know, we all want to feel better. We all want to feel like the world is safe, that our bodies are safe, that our lives are safe, and feel like a sense of peace and happiness. And I think that a lot of the traditional, well, I won't say traditional, the recent, the last, couple hundred years or so, routes that people have been taking, through um, self-medicating, whether that's through or medicating in general, whether it's, from a doctor or from a drugstore or from the liquor store or from someone you meet on the street, whatever, or through television or through TikTok or through Instagram or through love and sex and shopping or all these different kind of avenues that we have to numb out or to try to make ourselves feel better. um, that I think there's such a maybe there's just such a flood of that for available to everybody, no matter of your financial status or class or whatever. We have all of these pleasures that are very cheaply available to people, and I think there's a lot of folks that are just getting exhausted of that. And then, other kind of more substantial routes of the past that people might have followed, like through um, religions, um, that those seem to be, you know, have their place. And I'm not, against organized religion at all. And I think it's, in the most times better than nothing. But I think a lot of people are still looking for, well, what are like the roots of this tradition, or what's, um, looking for something a little bit more, a little bit deeper to get us through these really hard times.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
is a very, we, in the West, we have a lot of material comforts, even if it doesn't feel like that sometimes. But compared to historically, there's a lot of material comforts, but there's a great starvation of emotional connection, social connection, um, intellectual stimulation, art, music. There's just it exists. All of those things exist, obviously, but they're not widely available. You have to really find it and search for it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess these plants, if if the way, man, this is a big question, I'm realizing. But if we found our way into these sort of scenarios through just generation after generation of trauma, of wars, of violence, of disconnection from the earth, disconnection from spirit, disconnection from ourselves. In order to get back to that, we all are carrying like a lot of wounds and traumas and conditionings and bodily holds and all sorts of things that if we want to get back to, or we want to create a world that's has more utopian ideals, or at the least is at least compassionate to our fellow human beings and other living beings, then I think we have to go through and feel all of those heavy uh, weights that we're all carrying,
Mm-hmm.
the traumas, the wounds, conditionings, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Otherwise, I don't know. I don't know. It's what if that, it seems like that's the only way, really.
Yeah, I feel like the generations on top of generations bit that you just shared. And
Mm.
like, I had this dream on the 9th of my great grandmother. I've never dreamt of her. And
Mm.
uh, I asked my nana and my mom about it, and they're like, "Oh, that was her birthday." And I was like, "Well, here we
Oh
are."
my gosh.
And I'm thinking of her
Mm.
because there's a lot there in her story and mental health and like the things that have
Mm.
come down the line. Um, but like my synthesis on that dream and just like everything has been like, wow, like there's that saying that it's gonna keep moving down the bloodline
Yeah.
until someone feels it. And I'm like, oh, this sister, she is feeling
Mm.
it. Like I'm here and I'm feeling it,
Yeah.
And I think that that awareness now has created a little bit of a responsibility inside of me to change and educate myself differently and transform things. And, I'm a mother now. So it's like, how do I want to do this? Like, how do I want to pass things forward or not, like in whatever way? Um, and because of who, Mila from one of our classes, she posted
Yeah.
about scopalia,
Mm.
like just her posting that the other day. Um, I'm like, oh my gosh, that reminds me of my great grandmother. Like, just,
Mm.
I remember in class, like, just like how these plants, just in general, I think really took me to personally deep into like my ancestral um, conversations and like what's in my blood, what's in my bones. Like, there was something, not all of the plants, but I think like definitely for me, it was like scopalia and henbane and datura and hellebore that I would say were like kind of my top ancestral bits as far as doing journeys with them and what came through those. But yeah, like it's been on my mind, it's been on my heart, like feeling into things and even having conversation with another sister the other day about like that conversation was about like emotional management and emotional immaturity from parentification, emotional immaturity, and like how that's
Mm.
been passed down. And there's something that I feel like is like in this conversation at an intersection, at least in my consciousness for my personal projection or perception. It's just like seeing how yeah, I think that we're at a point in the collective where we are getting to choose things differently or rewrite things. But almost like I brought this up because there's something that you said in there that I'm like, yeah, I feel like we've had some tools, but like the tools that we need for the way forward are going to be very different. And it's like I feel like been I don't even know time. I don't
Mm.
let's just say 10 years, but it's probably longer than that. But like a time of organizing what the tools might look like or like helping people to understand. And I see this conversation around the poisonous plants and plant spirit journeys as being one of those things, like to help people kind of start to open up these sleepy parts of the
Mm.
self and kind of like peel back the onion and like disentangle and just start to tease it apart. I know that that was the benefit, at least for me. And, when I was really working with them quite consistently in plant spirit
Mm.
journeys, which I've taken, I mean, quite a break from. I'm not working so much with poison plants, but I like went through a really deep rose phase. Like,
Yeah.
like
That's needed after a long journey with years with the poisonous plants.
yeah, yeah. And so, but like, just like the what is plant spirit consciousness and like what is it like to talk to plants? Like, I think, just kind of in this conversation, I'm playing on the personal to transpersonal and the beginner to the maybe seasoned person who may be listening. Um, it's like that is such a valuable practice, and
Mm.
just opening to the plant realm. And I don't know. I think at a very basic level, they just remind me that it's not just about what humans want.
Mm.
um, and that I heard that they're part of the telluric realm, like they're elementals, but like, or elementals or, you know, nature spirits, but like to lurk in the way of that they're not perhaps moving like on the axis like we are, like walking around. And so, you know, like when a flower
Mhm.
blooms, they, or just a plant in general, they draw us to them, like this
Mhm.
magnetic thing. And like
Mhm.
that always really trips me out because I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, it's just a different, just a very different way of moving with the world. Like they've been doing it for years. That's very ancient. But I think as far as humans, you know, it's like, you know, you could call it patriarchal or masculine or just like the action and doing. And I feel like plants really remind me to be. And,
Mm.
you know, I can draw
Oh,
things to me or be receptive, that kind of stuff.
mm. I'm thinking of, and this maybe is too specific for the podcast conversation, but I know that you're a projector also.
Oh yeah, I'm down to talk about being a projector because
Like
that's
I'm
the
just thinking like
situation.
the drawing things to you, like you if you just emanate like a flower, that's what they say, right?
Oh my gosh.
As a
It's
projector. They'll just things will come, right?
it's been such a challenge to really understand that, but I like where you're going. And I was going to ask you this question. I'm going to say it real quick. If I were a plant, which, you know, I'm, I'm a plant, I have a plant heart. Um, I would be the love child of belladonna, scopalia, and red oleander and a rose, probably like an
God.
orange rose. But I was going to ask you, what, who would you be the love child of?
Well, first of all, that plant combination is like so I want to say it's so scary and so sexy. Like
That's
they're
my
all
personality.
and very, very feminine, like all very feminine and like
Thank you.
powerful. Yeah, I love it. Um, whew, I don't know. Oh boy.
I know it's a
Um,
weird question.
I mean, I feel like I have a little bit of them all, you know. I mean, I feel very connected to Datura and Brugmansia, um, and Hellebore. Um,
Hmm.
that's one I'd have to think about.
I have to say, when you wear braids, I always see you as a Brookmansia. So I don't know. I don't know
I
what
wear my braids like most days. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. But like,
Mm,
I love that, you know, just even like bringing their names here and like calling them into the field is really
mm.
special. Because there's, you know, there's just so many. I think Scopalia is like one of my favorites and it's so,
Wow.
it feels Aquarian to me. I think that's why I like it and I'm an Aquarius, but,
Mm,
um, different. It's like a belladonna, but not. I don't know why I think that about
yeah.
Scopalia, but that's my situation. Um,
Yeah. I'm surprised to hear that because not a lot of people are that connected to this plant. It's not as well known, as the other
mhm.
kind of nightshade, poisonous nightshade plants. It doesn't get as much love, but it makes sense to me that you would say that. And the Aquarian thing, it's like if Belladonna was an Aquarius, there's something that
Mhm.
makes sense to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think because Scopalia reminds me of La Scopa. I think that's
Mm,
maybe where that word comes from. I'm not sure. But that's the broom in Italian. And I'm like
mm,
that just it brings up a lot for me for my ancestry.
mm,
So I remember when you introduced it, because like I didn't know about Scopalia until your class.
mhm.
And I remember seeing her on the slide and I was like, what? I was waiting to meet you my whole life. I think I even said that in class.
Oh,
Like
oh,
when we did the journey, I was like, oh my gosh, like, um, it's like the feeling that I had when I held my son for the first time. I'm like, I feel like I've known you forever, but I don't know you at all. And I'm gonna get to meet, like, going to get to know you. And Scopalia, I want to say I was pregnant when I did that with you. So it was
mm,
like really special.
oh,
Um, yeah, I'm happy to be talking about them here in this
mm,
space, but just because, you know, it is a different one. But what was I going to ask you? I had another question about when we were talking about the world. It'll come back to me. But yeah, I wanted to ask, like, you know, if we're getting started, I mean, would you say start with journeys? Like start with just connecting to plants? Like where would be a good point with that?
If we're getting started with connecting with plants,
Yeah, yeah.
well, I think it depends on the person to some extent because some people have a strong resistance to the journeying, that can come in the form of like, this is woo-woo nonsense, or like, I can't sit for this long. I need to do something, or, different sort of, or I'm going to fall asleep, or,
Hmm.
different sort of like resistances to the journeys can come up for people. And so, even though I find it to be a really accessible way to connect with plants and to connect with our own selves, it's like, um, it's something where, if I were to say, okay, we're gonna all sit down and then connect in with a sexual trauma that happened to us at some time in our lives, people would be like, it would be overwhelming, I think, or too much to go towards, or maybe
Hmm.
I don't know, like where would I start? But when people connect in with the plants, like those sort of things, although hopefully not every journey is stuff like that, like every so often something like that arises, but it comes up in this like very kind of safe and easy way. Um, but the journeys are, I think a great way to connect in with the plants, which in my classes, the way that I do it is I drum, and for the first about third of the journey, I'm kind of talking people through a relaxation process, relaxing the physical body, the emotions, the mind. And then we welcome in, the spirit of whatever plant we're working with. And then for the rest of the journey, I'm drumming and just kind of singing without words, making sounds. I've
Hmm.
never said it like that before, singing without words, but and then just, giving people space to connect with the plants in their own way. But another very easy way to do it is you just you do like a meditation sort of practice, and you just sit down with a plant and just see what comes up. It's not even anything too fancy. You just imagine the plant, the vibrational field, or the consciousness, or the spirit of the plant coming into your awareness, and just noticing what comes up. Um, and flower essences are another um, way to connect in with the plants. Sometimes I think people can be surprised by how powerful they are, though.
Hmm.
And so I would always recommend, trying them out, as long, don't take it like before you have to go to work or something,
Hmm.
because sometimes they can bring up a lot of stuff, or they can surprise you with how they affect you. And and then, there's also the more physical forms like salves, like topical applications, um and those serve a purpose too. Like if you have physical pain,
Hmm.
using them topically in a way very similar to how you would use like a CBD salve or something like that. Um, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing all those different methods and ways. And like, I'm just gonna say, just go study with Catherine. Like, oh my gosh,
Oh.
it's just, I so looked forward to, and look forward to, all the things you're doing. When I was
Mm.
in class, be like, yes, it's Saturday, we're doing the
Mm.
class. Um, when you were
But
talking, I thought to ask you about tarot. Like, do you
mm,
think that there are intersections with at least the major arcana and the plants?
like, do certain plants have
Yeah.
similar energies to the major arcana energies?
Yeah, like if we were talking about the Empress, like who could be
Mm.
the Empress? Or I mean, maybe
Yeah.
there's like multiples, but I'm like, huh, I don't know. I've never thought to ask that, but it's coming
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, for sure. And it's another one of those things where it's like, the underlying energies of the plants, those what I was speaking about earlier, like those underlying energies are exist in so many different forms. The plants are just a very easily accessible way to connect in with them, but they exist through dreams and through different types of spiritual practices and through different pantheons and through tarot and through different psychological states and um, many many other forms. And so, yeah, the energetics of certain cards certainly would overlap with certain plants. Like when you said the Empress, I would certainly think of like belladonna and rose and um, any just sort of sensual plants. I mean, datura would probably be in there too.
Hmm.
Um,
It's so interesting. I like the way that you put that,
yeah.
in the energetics, because I think that like in the way that you just shared that, it feels very free and more like I saw vines, like just like more
Mm.
overarching, like in all of these different like archetypal energies or just like energetic blueprint signatures, like just like how they can move out and manifest in all the different ways with the plants. And dreaming with plants is something that I did for a little while and offered for a little while. And that's certainly a way that they come in. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, I was like seeing it in one way, and then the way that you answered the question, I'm like, yeah, that's like less boxy. uh
How were you seeing it?
like almost like an organization of like, do you feel like this is the Hierophant and this is the Emperor, like that kind of thing, or this is the moon. um
Well, there's
but
certainly that too. But then, like, the Hierophant has so many different aspects to it. And so does, I'm thinking, like, what plant would be the Hierophant? Hmm.
I get
Wow.
like tobacco.
Oh, tobacco. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting to like, I guess maybe think about tarot in that way. It's
Mhm.
not,
Yeah.
it was something on my mind a long time ago, and then it just like came back in this space with you. So it's just fun. It's fun to see it.
Mm.
Um, well, yeah, okay, so last question. Because the hallmark of Valentine's Day was here. But like, I don't know, it just eh, which I think is sometimes needed for some people and also cheesy for others. So,
Mm.
no judgment, whatever. But um, what do you think are great allies for love, for
Mm.
self love or partnered love? Like,
Yeah. Well,
I love to
for
talk about love anyway, so no.
yeah, love. I just want to say that I love Valentine's Day, and
Mm,
I love like all of our collective holidays because we have so few ceremonies and rituals
mhm,
culturally that even if they're kind of devoid of their uh deeper meanings, it's still just nice to like um have a day where you just wear red and pink and put
mhm.
hearts around and celebrate love.
I love that
Um,
perspective. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And plans for self-love, I think it part of it depends on where the wounds are around self-love. So, um, self-love, if there's, we all have slightly differing kind of wounds around our abilities to unconditionally love ourselves. And so, for example, if you had a father that was very cold or distant or not present, there could be woundings around feeling like not worthy of love from the masculine. And in those cases, you might reach for like tobacco could be, speaking of tobacco, or the yew tree comes to mind in general because it's
Hmm.
just so powerful for holding any sort of like grief or feelings of unlovability or unworthiness that we might have. But then if you have, wounds around sexuality or sensuality that interfere with your ability to feel love for yourself, unconditional love for yourself. Belladonna is one that can be really helpful for things like that. Um, so that's one of the things too with like flower essences and different things where I give general kind of ideas of I think this is helpful for this essence is helpful for this sort of energy. But we're also different and we all have different kind of holes that we're repairing, so to speak. Um, and so that will definitely affect which plants you reach for. But, in general, I mean, rose, of course, I know we're talking about poisonous plants, but of course, rose, there's a reason that it's associated with love. It is, as a plant spirit, a very loving plant, but it also has the thorns. So there's many
Mm.
sides to that plant, belladonna again, datura again, the yew tree. Um, what plants come to mind for you for self-love?
I was just like, oh my gosh, I haven't even named foxglove. And I'm like,
Oh,
foxglove,
foxglove. Yes. Mm-hmm.
digitalin. Like, I'm like, duh.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I think
For sure.
foxglove. I heard foxglove is great for, um, but I heard, I think this came to me in meditation. I'm not really sure that it was some outside, um, information, but, um, like partnered love, like helping quarrels or, um, just like being in partnership and the
Mm.
teachings that come through that kind of love.
Mm.
Um, I'm like, I'm thinking,
Yeah, I love that. I love foxglove too for brokenheartedness. Like if there's a block around self-love because your heart's been broken, you've been hurt in some way.
hmm
I know that can, again, can encompass a lot of different things, but yeah.
yeah, and bleeding heart. That reminds me of bleeding
Oh,
heart too.
bleeding hearts. Yeah.
I mean, oh, it's so cute. I wish they grew here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're limited.
I'm limited with that, but they're just so
Well,
cute.
I don't want to, it's not, I mean, every environment is limited in its own way, but then it has, other things that can grow there.
We have such a, in the desert, it's funny because um it's very with the flowers specifically. Like there are plants that grow and it's sparse, it's the desert, that's a whole teaching. But
Mm.
um what I've loved seeing over the years is just how things come and go. Like
Mm.
there are a lot of flowers, but they're just not there all the time, or maybe like not every season, like every spring they're not going to spring, but sometimes. And that's made it all the more special, and like it's just so sweet when, like, for example, um scorpion weed, which is a type of what is it, a type of Phacelia, I believe. um it's really special, and it's been like one of the, it's like low, I would say low key poisonous. They say poisonous because of the itchiness or something. um
Right.
but a very special plant that I learned about here in the desert, like just because it showed up in my awareness. And I think that that's been one of my biggest teachers, is just like noticing what plants I am seeing, and noticing what I'm not seeing. Like, compared to like, oh, maybe I was seeing Datura before. I saw a lot of Datura in 2020 and then like not a lot of Datura last year. So like
Mm.
kind of like waned out, and I'm like, whoa, where did my friend go?
Mm.
But like, and I know like other people were noticing this too, but then like other things were coming up. So like in
Mm.
2022, I saw for the first time ever a Mojave desert poppy. And
Oh.
that was so special because I'd never seen it. So, and that really helped, like those who are silenced, or like it was like a lot of voice stuff, and that's places where I silenced myself. That's what I was going through. So yeah, I would just say I'm kind of segueing from love, in that conversation. But that's just been really special for me, is just to notice who's in my awareness and who's not, or who pops up in my garden randomly. Um,
Mm.
because I feel like they know. It's so, I don't know. It's so non-linear, like outside of time and
Mm.
space. Like all of a sudden, that seed was there, like before the bloom happened. But I'm noticing the bloom because it's catching my attention. And then I think, but you've been there before I even knew. And that's really cool. Like I really nerd out on that. Um,
Mm.
so, so yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
and it's interesting, yeah, to note what kind of shows up, but then also to note what are we noticing and
Hmm.
why does that happen? It's such a strange, interesting phenomena of why does that happen? Why do certain plants come into our awareness at certain times and then they fade in and out? It's just like our human relationships too. There's times for certain friends, we learn lessons, and then maybe they stay, maybe they go.
Yeah, yeah. It's like truly a study of the soul for me. Like
Mm.
just to see that, and plants are very much a part of, like, just like they're in that gosh, what is the word? I'm like at a loss for words at the moment. What, they're in the toolbox essentially is what I'm saying.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
not like a now your mind toolbox. It's just so it's so fluid, it's so fluid.
Mm.
Along with dreams and psychology and art and like all these different things. So, yeah, I've really enjoyed chatting with you and being in this space with you. It's like, wow, it's been such a gift. Do you have classes coming up? What's happening in your world? Where
I
can we?
do. Um, I don't know what my schedule's yet is going to be for the rest of this year. But I will definitely be doing another level one of the poisonous plant medicine course. Um, Either I may do one this summer. I'm not sure on that yet. But I'm definitely going to do one in the fall. And then I have my Patreon where there's just many, many video classes on all different subjects, mostly plants and tarot and self-care but real self-care, not the superficial kind. And um symbology and herbal medicine, like making herbal smoke blends and herbal coffee and all different sorts of things. And through there, I also do collective tarot forecasts and we have monthly plant journeys. So if you're interested in doing a plant journey, but aren't sure if you want to take the class, there's a really, easy option to drop into one of those. And there too, there's a whole library of recorded journeys, pre-recorded journeys on there also. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna be kind of like figuring things out for the rest of this year. In the next week or two, I'm going to be changing things up a little bit in certain areas. I think I have some new offerings in mind.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I absolutely love all of your resources on the Patreon, so highly, highly recommend. And your tarot. Oh my gosh, you're so gifted with that.
Thank
Like,
you.
I had so many readings last year with her, and I just have to say, everybody, like, it it wasn't that situation, where you're just getting a reading just so that, like, it was very, very empowering. Um, as a person who's offered readings for many years, and like I have my own kind of integrity and morality system with that. I'm like, your approach was just so perfect, like a good fit for me. And like how you ask questions, like the inquiries that you brought up in the readings, and I mean, it was, of course, spot on and very prophetic, but not that you were like trying to do that, like, in like a
Mm.
cheesy way. It was just like so open and freeing. And there were some months where I'd receive the reading and be like, oh man, like I can feel what this is. But am I up to the test to deal with this energy? And then I'd come back to the reading and be like, wow, that's what she meant by like this phrase or whatever. And so it was just really cool to like have that support and to see that. So I just wanted to share that because I was just so thankful to have
Yeah.
that last year. Because it was such a such a pivotal year for me.
Mm.
Um, I'm happy to be on the other side of things.
Mm.
So yeah, anyhow.
Now.
I don't know. Maybe that's foolish to say. Like, universe, I know nothing. I'm humbled. I'm just
I'm just
humbled.
joking. But thank you for saying that. It's good. It's good to hear. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love doing readings, and I think I'm gonna start offering them through my website again. I think I'm gonna one of the things I think I'm gonna be pivoting from is not doing readings through Patreon anymore, but doing them through my website. I'll still have the
fun.
collective forecasts on Patreon, but yeah.
Yeah, fun. Well, everyone, I'm going to be linking all of the things so you can connect with Kathryn. And just like a huge, huge thank you again for being here and sharing your wisdom and your voice and your energy and time with us. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really nice to talk with you as always.
Yes, yes. And everybody, we're concluding here. Can't wait to for you to hear this and talk soon. Bye.